I will ask my team, put all your accolades here on the screen just for people to see the context, how many are out there and what your achievements are.
I gave a 1-hour speech, standing ovation, sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of books and signed autographs for 3 hours. Jim, they've Googled you. They know who you are.
You're a professional musician.
It's a style of cooking. It's a tasty treat. It's a Southern man.
Religion entirely based on meat.
Another passion that you have that I know are the motorcycles.
I ride my motorcycle, a Triumph Bonneville 1200cc bike, on the twistiest roads I can find.
You just casually mentioned, I just crossed the desert, whatever.
I did skydiving, and they filmed it coming down. It's not about your choice of the toy. It's about your experience as you play.
You were not given this, right?
I was born in the first year of the baby boom. Whatever happened with me was usually happening with most of the people I knew. Nobody expected to do really well. Nobody's thinking, oh, look, there's Jimmy. He's gifted. He's going to do great things. Earl Nightingale, I heard him on the radio in '72.
I'd like to tell you about the strangest secret in the world.
I listened to those fanatically, as in the textbook definition of the word. Every day, every spare minute, I was committed to the cause. If I have to break our television with a hammer, I will do so, but not going to the dark side anymore. When was the day you took charge of your own life?
To introduce my guest today, I'd like to use words from his song. I'm sorry, I won't sing them. I'm just gonna read them out loud. Resume the boom. It's time to call the roll again. Resume the boom. I swear I would never grow old again. Resume the boom. I'll rock and roll till the very end. Resume the boom. We still have our dreams, sweetheart. These words are the best to describe my guest. I'm very inspired by this conversation and hope that it will touch you as much. Here is my interview with Jim Cathcart. Thank you and enjoy the episode. So I do have some questions, and obviously I can ask you so much, and you've done so many great interviews, and I don't want us to go over some of the things that you've talked, so I can just attach some links. I mean, you've done interviews for 40 years, so I'm not sure whether I'm going to surprise you with some questions, but let's see. All right. So what I'll do, Jim, I will ask my team to put all your accolades here on the screen just for people to see the context, how many are out there and what your achievements are. So we're not going to go over them.
Okay.
But what I wanted us, and you've done that multiple times, but I wanted us to go back to that Earl Nightingale's factor, Earl Nightingale's story, because I wanted people to see how far you've come with all this accolades and where did you start it, that you were not given this, right? And it's not something that happened overnight, but at the same time, for you to get to that first success, you didn't spend 20 years doing that. You still, so you did the push and you get the result of that push, immediate result, right? So, so help me to live that day one more time, or that time of your life one more time when you first get on the phone with Earl Nightingale.
Okay. In 1972, I was living in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I grew up, and my dad was a telephone repairman, mom was a homemaker, and I had a little sister, Kathy, and my grandfather had been disabled by a stroke and spent the last 7 years of his life in a hospital bed in our front bedroom, unable to speak or move. And so my mom took care of him and my grandmother and my sister and me, and Dad was on the road as a lineman and a repairman for the phone company most of the week. And as far as I was concerned, that was normal. I walked 3 blocks to school and had lots of friends in the neighborhood. It was the baby boom. So everybody else was basically my age. I was born in the first year of the baby boom, 1946, graduated high school the last year of the baby boom, 1964. So there's 78 million people between those 2 years that were born. And I was in the first crop. So whatever happened with me was usually happening with most of the people I knew. And so all our dads had come home from the war and all our moms were having babies, and, the neighborhood was full of people to play with. So it was a good childhood. I mean, we didn't have much money, but it was a good childhood. One thing, though, nobody expected to do really, really well. We expected most of the people I hung out with to have a nice life, but to be kind of like our parents and be middle class earners and have kids and have a modest home and retire at 65 because that was the legal retirement age, and then die a few years after whenever our gene pool ran out. I didn't dream big dreams. Well, I had dreams like being, a movie cowboy or being Tarzan or being, some kind of a war hero or something like that. I dreamed what I saw in the movies and on TV. Dreamed of being Davy Crockett because there was a popular TV series on Davy Crockett. So I went through high school. I was a normal student. Graduated 176th out of 430. So, upper 50%, but definitely not in the top. And I'd never been an athlete. Didn't test high in IQ scores or anything. So nobody's thinking, oh, look, there's Jimmy. He's gifted. He's going to do great things. It's just, oh, hi, Jimmy. We'll be with you in a moment. That was about it.
Yeah.
So I got married I went to college a couple of years, and then I dropped out of college, and my grades weren't good. And I worked a few jobs, and I went to work in a bank, and I met my wife, Paula, and we got married in 1970 and had a baby a year later. And I was working at the Little Rock, Arkansas Housing Authority, the Urban Renewal Agency, for $525 a month. I was an assistant to Bob Moore, and Bob Moore was bored. So Bob didn't need any help, and I was his helper. Yeah. So $525 a month for sitting at a desk and wondering what to do. I read books on urban renewal, and I thought, nope, that's not my path. And I listened to the radio, and I read other books. I read the Bible at work, cover to cover, in 3 months. That's how much time I had. So I'm sitting there one day in the next room. Earl Nightingale's voice is on the radio. And Earl Nightingale at that time was considered the dean of personal motivation. So he was a worldwide phenomenon like a Tony Robbins or Les Brown or somebody today. And that particular day, his little 5-minute radio show, he said, if you will spend 1 extra hour every day studying your chosen field, within 5 years, you'll be a national expert in that field. And I thought about it. And I thought, okay, an hour a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, 5 years, that's 1,250 hours on one subject. Yeah, that would make me pretty knowledgeable. And if the subject was real narrow, I could be one of the most knowledgeable in that field. So instead of studying something like leadership, maybe I should study leadership of small teams in sports, the more narrow your field gets. Instead of studying science, I'll study molecular biology as applied to X. The more specific you get, the more rapidly you advance in your lane. But I didn't have a lane. And I sure didn't want to pursue the lane I was in, urban renewal for a government agency.
Right.
So I took courses in real estate. That wasn't it. And then one day it hit me, I want to do what he does. I want to grow up to be Michael. I want to be like you. I want to be the guy on the radio. And I had a problem, though. I'd never given a speech, and I had nothing to say. So that'll kind of keep you modest. And I thought, well, okay, I want to be like Earl Nightingale. I don't even know what that means. I just know that feels right to me.
Right.
So about that same time, I joined the Junior Chamber of Commerce, the JCs. And in 1972, the JCs were huge because the JCs, unlike Rotary and Lions and Optimist and other civic clubs, their specific purpose is leadership training for young adults by doing community projects. So they're not there to do community projects. They're there to learn leadership. And this was the beginning, as I said, of the baby boom coming into the marketplace. So I joined, and so had 356,000 others in the USA. And I formed, with some friends, a new chapter in my own neighborhood in Little Rock, Arkansas. And that year and the following year, we formed 280 chapters in the state of Arkansas, which was like going viral. And so every community had a group of young leaders or young aspiring leaders who were meeting and talking about goal setting and, interpersonal communication and project planning and motivation and things like that. And they were all excited about becoming better in whatever field they were pursuing, be it farming or banking or, whatever they were into. And so I went to seminars. There weren't many seminars back then. As a matter of fact, the word itself was kind of rare. Today, you could find a seminar every 5 houses in any neighborhood, and it's virtual mostly, but lots of live ones. So I went to a seminar one day that was called Adventures in Attitudes. And Adventures in Attitudes was a seminar conducted by a company that conducted seminars. It was put together by 2 men, Leo Hauser and Bob Conklin. They were out of Minneapolis. And they had this seminar put together with worksheets and questionnaires. And they would have local leaders facilitate the meeting. And it was 1 day long. And I went to this. I don't know what it cost me, but at the time it seemed expensive. So it was probably $40 or something. And I want you to notice this. Can you read that date? August 1974.
Okay.
This is the actual worksheet, one of many from that seminar. And it says on it, determining your purpose. And I got to put the glasses on for this because I wrote it in pencil back then. Now consider 1974 to today. That's a long time, right? And at the time I wrote this down, I was a clerk at the housing authority with a new baby at home. I was 50 pounds overweight, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and basically a likable loser. All right. Here's my purpose statement from 74. My purpose in life is to affect other lives in a way that will make them more aware of their potential and make them more honest and considerate in dealing with others. It will make this a better world to live in, give me respect, gain them respect, and cause people to care more about other people. This may be a bit vague, but it is an area I'd love to pursue. If I can stay in a position to lead, guide, or counsel others, I can accomplish this goal. I was 28 years old when I wrote that. It came true. I mean, that boggles my mind. I was 28 years old, had never set a goal in my life, never achieved anything in my life, had no money, no connections, no rich uncle or knowledgeable person to take me under his or her wing. I was just a guy trying to do better, right? Mm-hmm. And I had dreamed previous to that of becoming a singer. I play guitar and sing even today, and I do it professionally as a side gig. But back then, I was singing and playing guitar in nightclubs and beer joints and private parties, things like that, for whatever they would pay, which would be a free beer or dinner, and occasionally got paid. But wow, the distance between then and now is just mind-boggling. One more comment. I bought or borrowed and read all the classic works like Think and Grow Rich. This is a first edition Think and Grow Rich. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, also early edition. How to Be a Genius and The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Waddle. Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz. The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale. Zig Ziglar's See You at the Top, And that's a picture of Zig Ziglar and Norman Vincent Peale, both of whom later became my friends. And Zig Ziglar's corporation hired me recently to be the keynote speaker for all of their trainers around the world. Oh my gosh. I mean, Michael, think of the distance between where I started and where I ended up. Just blows my mind. Because Earl Nightingale, I went to work, I heard him on the radio in 72, joined the JCs, got really active, started listening to Earl Nightingale's tapes. A man sold me a big library of Earl Nightingale's audio cassettes, which
You have it there.
I still have on my bookshelf today. It cost more than my monthly salary. It cost $560 for those 36 tapes. And then there were 12 more that I bought later. I listened to those fanatically. Fanatical as in the textbook definition of the word. Every day, every spare minute, everywhere I went, every time I got in the car, I had a portable cassette player and listened to those recordings. And because I knew I had to change my worldview, my way of seeing things and thinking about myself and other things. And listening to those recordings again and again and again reconditioned me to see the world differently. At the end of a month of borrowing those recordings, I had the option of either giving them back or finding a way to pay for them. And my wife said, "Why don't you keep them?" Which means, "Jim, I've seen so much change in you to the positive. I don't want to go back."
Yeah. I will follow up with my question, but I wanted to just to reconfirm one thing. When the first kind of success happened or the first money happened so you're 28, you start listening, you start kind of, grinding, you start kind of getting in that new profession, changing your mindset, changing your view. I know the answer. I've researched that, but I wanted, us to kind of tell this to the audience. How many years did it take for you to have the first considerable paycheck, and then you say, "Okay, I've seen the fruits of the labor coming in"?
Well, 1972 is when I heard the radio recording. So that was the inspiring moment that started me thinking differently and realizing that if I was willing to do the work, I really could actually become successful in some ways. And so I joined the JCs later that year. I got active in the community. And as I learned these new skills through the JCs work, they showed up on the job at the housing authority. And my boss at the housing authority said, "Hey, I want to promote you. You're no longer going to be Bob's helper. We want you to come to the head office, which is in downtown Little Rock."
Right.
I was in the field office. "And you're going to be an assistant to the board of directors." Woo-hoo! Well, that for me was big time, right?
Yeah.
So I moved into a nice little corner office and I was working with all these people that I thought were a pretty big deal. And I sat in on board meetings, which was exciting. And in the JCs, I was learning parliamentary procedure and learning how to conduct meetings and participate in them. So I could see the parallels between on the job and off the job. And I'm listening to all these recordings, reading the books, and other people are helping me. So I take on a few projects and chairmanships, and things go well. And my confidence grows. And I get to where I really know what I'm talking about. So they give me another raise at work. And then one day, a woman walked up to me, a secretary. She said, "Ha ha," which means she had pulled a trick on me, right? I said, "Ha ha, what?" She said, "You're the new president of our employees association." I said, "We have an employees association?" She said, "Yeah, we had a meeting just the other day and we elected you our new president." Okay. And so I didn't know, they were doing this as a joke because the employees association was meaningless at the time. Well, I decided to take it seriously. So I went and met with the director of the housing authority and talked with him about the relationship between him and the employees and so forth. And I put together a meeting for the group and I started organizing things. And the next thing that happened was I got free parking for all our employees. We had been parking in a remote lot and walking several blocks no matter what the weather. And I got free parking across the street from the headquarters for everybody. I started getting other benefits, and I got another raise. Well, this is working pretty well. And then the guy who sold me the Earl Nightingale tapes said, Jim, I want you to leave the housing authority and come to work with me selling these tapes. And I said, well, I don't know how to sell. I've tried selling and I'm not good at it. And he said, yes, you are. You just don't realize how to approach it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I've seen you in JC's meetings. I've seen you give speeches and presentations. You're good at it. Okay. So I left the housing authority. I went to work with him. And I'm leaving a few pieces out, but this pretty much hits the highlights. I was selling motivational recordings door to door at a time when almost nobody had a cassette player. They had 8-track tapes. And motivation was not a popular subject yet. Self-development was new and rare. If you went into a bookstore looking for books, you'd find maybe those 5 or 6 that I had mentioned. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's entire sections, right?
Yeah.
Well, I sold Earl Nightingale's recordings in 1974 up until August of 75, and I got a call from the USJC's national headquarters, Tulsa, Oklahoma. They said, Jim, how would you like to be a full-time JC? And I said, well, I've been to 400 JC's meetings in 2 years after work for no pay while working at the housing authority and while selling Earl Nightingale's tapes also.
Right.
So I would love to be a full-time JC. What do you mean? They said, come to Tulsa. We're going to put you in charge of leadership training for all 300,000 members.
Wow.
That night, I was in my car and headed for Tulsa, which is hundreds of miles away. So I drove to Tulsa, interviewed, and August 28, 1975. Now remember that little piece of paper I showed you?
Yeah.
That was August 28, 1974. All right. The reason I know it was August 28th is I set a goal for 5 years later, and I made it September 1st instead of August 28th because September is my birth month, and I thought that would be cooler. So exactly 1 year to the day later, I go to Tulsa, Oklahoma to interview to be the leadership training director. They called it individual development senior program manager. But anyway, leadership training director for 356,000 people. Can you say national expert? 1 year, but one phenomenally fanatical year, followed by another one. 400 meetings for free after work in 2-year period.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, you can advance rapidly.
Yeah.
And by the way, I was at the USJCs in that position for 2 years and then went out on my own as a full-time speaker and trainer and author and have done that ever since. 1977 was launch date.
And what I'll do, I will ask my team to put the accolades. So then after that, the rewards and the success, and then, whatever you received in 90s, 2000, 2010, 2020, 2023, just go right? So the question is, what did it take? What did it take for all those 50 years to go just up?
People ask me, how did you know you would succeed? I didn't. I just knew I was never going to quit. There's a big point there. I knew sooner or later I was going to achieve most of the goals I had set because I was unwilling to give up. I was willing to fail. I was willing to go through pain and extra expense and have things take longer than expected, but I was not willing to give up. So I set goals that were enormously ambitious for someone like me at that time. And all of my goals were down here compared to where I ended up actually getting.
Right.
Wow. I mean, I became president of the National Speakers Association, which was only 200 members when I joined, and it ultimately got to 3 or 4,000 members and a worldwide organization, while I and others helped grow it into that. I was a banker when I met my wife, working as a teller in a bank, and I ended up on the executive faculty of the American Bankers Association for 6 years, training bank presidents, writing books published by the American Bankers Association. I had never written a book, never expected to, and my 25th book just came out in June of this year, What to Do When You're the Speaker. 25 books? Are you kidding me?
I
I
read
got the
that.
Golden Gavel Award from Toastmasters International. It goes on and on. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
I read that you always write a book at a time. So you publish one, and then you always kind of start working,
Well, that's true. I've got
researching
3 in the
something.
pipeline right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I will put all the achievements so people can realize how far you've go. But then the question is, what sacrifices did you make for success?
Well, first sacrifice was not so much a sacrifice as a commitment, and that was to actually make this happen. I knew I had to change me, because the me that I was born with and raised to be was going to be a nice guy, but an ordinary guy. And I wanted to have an extraordinary, wonderful, exciting life. I never expected to travel the world, but I expected to travel some. And I've been paid to speak in all 50 U.S. states, every province of Canada except the Yukon. And I've been around the world 3 times on lecture tours, 23 major cities in China, on and on. That kind of mind-boggling, above and beyond. What it took was a commitment to trust the process of listening to those recordings, reading these books every single day, 1 extra hour, every single day, no exceptions. Every day, 1 extra hour. Somewhere in that day, there was going to be an hour I was going to be either reading or listening or both. And I kept notes like you saw, that 1974. I've also kept a little pocket calendar every year going back all the way to 1970. Wow. So I can tell you a lot about, where I was and what was going on at that time. Now, my little pocket calendar is not filled with all the details about my life, but, I can tell you pretty much what was going on that day.
Right.
First off, I had to stop being a fat guy, because I had always been fat, or at least tended toward fat. And so I decided to change my eating habits for 5 years. Now, all diets will work. If you reduce the intake and increase the burn up, you will shrink. Well, I'd done that successfully time and time again, but I always gained it back. So here I was in 1974 and 5, and I was up to 200 pounds, and I ought to weigh 150. So I said, okay, I'm going to change my eating habits for 5 years. I'm not going to go on a diet. I'm literally going to change my habits. And I did. And I'm going to exercise every day. Now, how do I get myself to exercise every day when it hurts to run half of a block? Well, I said, I know that I can get myself to put on my running shoes and walk to the curb. I don't know whether I can get myself to run. So I committed to putting on running shoes and walking to the street every single day. My wife rolled her eyes. Jim, nobody would have known. I would have known. So it was all about training me. And I had a will that was bigger than the student. So the student was me, and I knew I needed to discipline me to be a better student and a better achiever. And so I had to force myself to do silly things when I got criticized by other people for doing them. And people would roll their eyes or trivialize what I was doing. Didn't matter. I was committed to the cause. And it happened, and I started becoming more confident, more focused. I lost 50 pounds in about a 3-month period.
Wow.
Started jogging, got to where I was fit and trim, stopped smoking. It really made a difference.
Of course, it took a lot to get there. But what I'm impressed is how much time did you keep it after that? Like keeping the diet, keeping the exercise, keeping the discipline.
The diet part of it was only the first few months. The rest of it was new eating habits, which is a new dietary discipline, right? And so one of the first things I had to do was learn to appreciate that plain water was okay. Because for me, it was always iced tea with sugar, or soft drinks with sugar, or something sweet, coffee with sugar. I had to learn to appreciate and enjoy black coffee, which I do. I had to learn that you don't need dessert with every meal. I had, all these things. I had to learn that I should notice how much fat's going in and how much unhealthy food is being consumed, and expect less and learn to enjoy less. So I did that. But I also learned that the hardest push-up in the world is not the 100th one, it's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wanted to do push-ups, I wouldn't commit to doing 50 or 100. I would commit to doing the first one. Well, while I'm down there, what else am I going to do? Right? And if a person, I've had people say to me, I can't do a push-up. I said, well, do this with me. Just lay down face down on the floor. And they say, well, I swear I cannot do a push-up. I say, okay, just trust me on this. Get with me. We get down on the floor. And I say, okay. And then I get up. And they say, well, what do I do now? I said, whatever you want. Well, what do you mean? I said, well, get up if you want to, but that's going to be a push-up. And they roll their eyes and say, oh, no, you caught me. I guess I can do one push-up. Yeah. And if you could do one, you could do it again. Yeah. So don't tell me you can't do push-ups. Yeah. And so then, I got fit and stayed fit. Now, that was age 28 we were talking about a while ago. I'm 76 years old. My waist is 30 inches. I weigh 150 pounds. I work out regularly. I have run 15,000 miles of mountain trails in the past 10 years in California before coming here to Austin, Texas, where we live today. I play guitar and sing in clubs for pay. Yeah. I ride my motorcycle, a Triumph Bonneville 1200cc bike, on the twistiest roads I can find, and have ridden 150,000 miles around the world on motorcycles. And I'm constantly writing books and giving speeches and collaborating with other people and mentoring people who want to become a better speaker, presenter, or business owner.
That's what I was talking about, that to get something, you need to either, again, maybe, sacrificing is not the best way of putting it, but, or limiting something yourself. And, over the course of, the next 50 years of, of your career with everything that's going on in your life, all these events happening at the same time, the speed of the life is immense, right? And the question I have for you, with that kind of speed of events just happening in your life, you don't have time for everything, right? There's no time for everything. So I was wondering, now looking back, did you spend enough time with yourself, with your hobbies, or you sacrificed something in that time? Did you spend enough time with your family, with your kids, or you sacrificed something of that? Or how did you find that?
I used to have a lot of friends who didn't aspire to much. And when I got together with them and I would talk about goal setting and I'd talk about bigger dreams and talk about the latest book I had read, they would just lose interest. And so finally, my circle of friends changed. And I enjoyed those friendships, but they weren't going anywhere, and I was. And I knew I couldn't continue to bear the weight of their anchor trying to pull me back to the old ways. They want to go out drinking. I don't want to go out drinking. I don't mind drinking, but I don't want to make that the goal. We'll have a beer or two when we go to the beach, but let's not make it about getting drunk. Let's make it about going to the beach or something. So my circle of friends changed. I had a new baby at home and a wife I love very much. And I said, I am not willing to have my career destroy my family. And I want to read you something. I am so very proud of this. Now, this is my latest book, What to Do When You're the Speaker. It came out the 1st of June, 2023. My son, our only child, is 50, soon to be 52 years old. Okay? He wrote in this book a piece called A Son's Perspective.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, would you write something to go in this book? Because people are going to want to know if I want to be a full-time speaker,
Right.
how's that going to work? So here's his comment. Growing up as the only child of a professional speaker is a unique experience. Instead of getting signatures from sports heroes, my signature book was filled with legends like Zig Ziglar. Instead of getting timeouts when I misbehave, I got hour-long discussion lectures on making the right choices. I remember hitting my teenage years and rebelling against the whole idea of self-improvement. A desire for public speaking? Never. I would say it must have skipped a generation. And then I grew up and I got a job in learning and development, which led to a career in human resources in the luxury hospitality field. He works for Four Seasons Hotels. Public speaking? Check. How to motivate a team? Check. Emotional intelligence? Check. All required skills in my now 25-year career. Only I didn't go to college for those subjects. And yet I progressed up the ladder in human resources. I felt like I had a knack for it, and it was fun every day. And people say, you can learn a lot living with an expert in communication if you pay attention. I'm here to tell you, you absorb a ton even if you don't pay attention. Now, I love that.
Yeah.
My son, they say, by their fruits, you shall know them. So someone says, all right, Jim, you're this big deal motivator, blah, blah, blah. How's your life really? Okay. I'm 76 years old, healthy and fit. Celebrated my 53rd wedding anniversary 2 days ago. Paula and I still love each other dearly. Our son is a senior executive with Four Seasons Hotel Corporation in California. He has 2 kids, one of whom just graduated college with a degree in music, and he produces music. He's got like 140 songs already on Spotify. He also does close-up magic. He has a black belt in Taekwondo. He was a tuxedo model when he was going to high school, and he's an athlete and an A student and teaches mathnasium courses because he scored a perfect SAT score in math. That's the boy. The girl is Amber. She's 20 years old, and she's going to San Diego State University, and she's studying to become a teacher like her mom. And she was the captain of the cheerleading team, the one they throw up in the air that they call the flyer, and in high school. And just an amazing person as well. So my family is solid. I've been married 53 years. My son's been married 25 years. His kids are turning out beautifully. You tell me.
Yeah.
Right?
There are some things that you cannot sacrifice. You cannot sacrifice yourself, your health, your family, your relationship with the dearest one, right? Now, for the people that are currently like beating their asses in the offices, just working, entrepreneurs, hustling, like there's some sacrifices that they're making, right? For their road to success. Looking back, what do you think a person can sacrifice for a success?
I didn't feel like I sacrificed anything. I felt like I gained. What I sacrificed, if you will, was the things that wouldn't have led me anywhere meaningful anyway.
Yeah.
And, I looked at options. I still am very intentional about the way I live my life. And that, I think, is my superpower, intentionality. I was intentional about the way I communicated with my wife and son every day. I was traveling early in my speaking career 250 days a year. That's a lot of time away from home. When I say traveling, I mean flying to another state to give a speech. So lots of overnights, 250 nights a year, and sometimes more than that. But my son said, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, we were having a conversation, and he said, you were gone that much? I said, yeah. He said, it seemed like you were always around. Hello? How could it seem like I was always around if I was traveling 2 out of every 3 days in a year? Well, because every single day without exception, I called home and talked with him and talked with my wife. When he was a little bitty guy, he would answer the phone, Cathcart residence. And I would say, hey, Jimmy. And he'd say, hey, Dad, I'll get Mom. I said, no. I didn't call to talk to Mom this time. I called to talk to you. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. And so he and I would talk. Okay, I'll get Mom. No, we're done. And we would hang up. So he knew he mattered to me. I would come home from a trip and the next day go to his school and ask his teacher if I could have lunch with him. I mean, all kinds of creative things like that.
Like looking at your answer, I think that I know what you sacrificed. You sacrificed the weakness that you had, not showing up, not being taken care of, not being disciplined. It's like I'm trying to compare my lifestyle, the people around me, and, in this age, in 2023, with like your phone, your TikTok, your Instagram, your Netflix, everything. And I know that we have a lot of habits that is a part of our life that we cannot sacrifice, or it's so dear for us that we say, oh, sorry, it's part of my routine. It's who they are, right? But like looking at, your life and what you've achieved, I understand that you didn't sacrifice anything because that was a part of who you are, a part of like your mindset. And for us to become, we also need to be critical about who we are and what we do right now and what sacrifices we can make. Right?
We've got to be willing to be criticized and scorned, so to speak, by people that think we're way too much. People used to say, oh, here comes Mr. Motivator, like that was a bad thing, right? And so you got to be willing to not be openly admired by other people at first. But if you continue your discipline, I guarantee you they're going to admire you. I mean, I had an experience not too awful long ago at church. Someone, we were discussing a comment someone had made, and I gave a response, and I wasn't sure it had made sense to the person I was talking to. And the person I was talking with said, Jim, they've Googled you. They know who you are. And I went, oh, well, okay. All right, fine. Never mind. We can go on and talk about something else.
Yeah.
But something else I gave up that just occurred to me is I gave up the weakness, the comfort, if you settle into something and it makes you weaker, that's usually justified because you say it's comfortable that way. Well, the comfort of using the language that came to everybody else normally, like saying the word I can't when you mean I don't yet, or I haven't, or I don't see, in other words, someone say I can't do that. And people say no means no. Well, can't means can't. Well, no, that's not what I meant. Hey, when you say it, you know who hears it? You do. You influence yourself by your choice of words. Well, I didn't mean it that way, and I know what I meant. When you say it, you reinforce the thinking that goes with it. So the words you choose are very influential tools. And if you say, I can't, then it means it's off the table. Give up. Walk away. Yeah. If you mean, I don't see how it works yet. We haven't done that before, and I don't see us doing it again.
Yeah.
Fine, but use the language that's accurate. And like someone says, I'm anxious to meet you. Why? anxious is good. No, anxiety is based in fear.
Mhm.
Are you eager to meet me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, then say so. Don't say you're anxious to meet me, because if you're afraid about it, something's wrong on one of our parts.
Yeah.
Be eager, not anxious.
So true. I think just to kind of, to sum up that the road to success is there, and, you're an example of an immense success, right? Person who've done it in their life, and you didn't sacrifice yourself, your family, your health, but there was something that you gave up, and as you just pointed out, you gave up the comfort, you gave up the weakness, you gave up not showing up.
Yeah.
So just kind of, thinking and
I
reflecting
gave up
on
excuses.
right? And it's something. So sometimes
It's not easy. Yeah.
yeah, it's easier to say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm working late. I'm not going to show up for the dinner, or I'm sorry, I'm going to work on the weekend on the office because I can, kind of do this. And it's an easy way out, right? Because now you kind of just, what it is like, but then being with your family and being at dinners and then showing up at work and being on top of your game and being that disciplined, that's the hard work, and doing that year after year consistently. So again, that's
But also it's important to not push that onto other people so that they dread being around you because they don't have the discipline and you do.
Yeah.
Then there's sort of like a elephant in the room of guilt on them. Oh, you're this big achiever. You set goals and you do great things. And you don't take time and do this and that, and you're not a slob. Yeah, you don't have to be either, but I'm not going to bother you about it. It's just
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so true.
When my wife goes like to visit family on a weekend trip or something, and she comes back, she knows never, not sometimes, never is the house going to be a mess. I don't make a mess. I'm not anal about things, but I don't make a mess. I'm thoughtful and intentional about what I do. I've been reaching around and finding things on the shelf here, and I found that piece of paper from 1974. That's because where I keep things is where I'm meant to keep them. And so they're easy to find. And the things that don't matter, I throw away, or I give away, or recycle them, or whatever.
I look at this as a scale where it's a journey, and you've gone this far, and you've been very intentional with every step and how much effort and how much effort you put into that. But as you just pointed out, every person is on a certain journey, so you don't need to expect everyone to go as far as you've gone, right? Or as far as you go, and being able to sacrifice that amount of comfort, right? Like, it's fine to watch a Netflix movie. It's fine to just kind of feel comfort, right?
And by the way, I watch lots of TV.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Ted Lasso never missed an episode.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the third stage of your life in a couple of minutes for sure. I want to know about that.
Okay.
The time you're spending. Yeah. But, again, the point was that we shouldn't expect everyone else around us to sacrifice the same small things in our life as we do, because it's the only way. It's not, right? Yeah. Anyhow, I wanted to move on with something that I find very interesting in your personality and your attributes. So you're a professional musician, and music plays a huge part in your life.
Yep.
And I'm talking to a lot of people, and what's happening right now with like technology being around us and all these tools and all the automations, all the processes, we start being very process funnel oriented, right? It's like we go in the process, we have the templates, we have the automation, we're very efficient with the way we are. But I've seen creativity is disappearing in a lot of the professions, including sales, right? Salespeople are not as creative as they were, right? So can you help me to understand, how did you incorporate creativity in your work, maybe in your books, in your public speeches, and what can we do with like creativity around us right now to, again, to help us to be better at what we are doing?
Well, I think that's what's unique to humans, is that we have the capacity to create. You know, you look at the rest of the animal kingdom, and there are no other creators out there. They're combiners. You know, they're things like an orangutan will get a stick and stick it into an anthill and eat the ants or termite hill, whatever. You know, that's using a tool. That's not creativity. I really appreciate and am committed to having the deepest possible foundational level handled so everything else can be negotiable. Like when I get into a discussion, I'm looking for what's this really about? Someone says, "Hey, you know, we got a problem. All of our mail is showing up too late, and people, when they come into their cubicle, you know, where the little mailboxes are, the mail hadn't been put away yet, and that's a real problem because." And I say, "Excuse me, what's really going on here?" I might not say it to the other person, but I am in my mind. And if we've got, let's say, a sales team and they're complaining about what time during the day the mail gets put up in their little boxes, that's the wrong problem to be worried about. They're not busy enough creating new prospects and making calls and being concerned about confirming sales. They're focusing on nitpicking little things that if it were 3 hours later, it wouldn't matter. Right?
Right.
So I'm not looking at the superficial level first. I'm looking at it as a symptom and then say, what's it a symptom of? Well, sometimes it's just a symptom of an urgent need for what's coming in the mail. Okay, good. That's a one-time occasion. But if it's a regular complaint, then it tells me something else is the problem. Same thing's true at home. You know, if your spouse is snapping at you and all that, that's what they're snapping about isn't the problem. It's whatever bruise you left that hasn't healed yet. So you got to go find that bruise and resolve that one. And, you know, if I look at my own life and let's say I don't have enough discipline going on in my business, then I want to be sure and sustain or increase my discipline in other areas so that the discipline halo effect comes on. And, you know, like if I'm more committed to fitness or I'm more committed to financial details or more committed to whatever, then that makes a difference. But like guitar, I have 3 guitars right here at my elbow. I play guitar a little bit almost every day. And when I play, I don't get out the technology. I don't get out the sheet music. I don't get out the lyrics. I sit down with the guitar. I think about the song I want to play. And I try and do it as well as I can do it 100% from memory. Well, I know 500 songs that I could play right now pretty well. I mean, I could play most of them all the way through without a mistake. I might get a couple of the stanzas in reverse order, but that would be about the only error. Well, how in the world do you do that? You learn one song at a time. I remember learning Desperado. It took me forever. There was something about the lyrics that just didn't fit into the files in my head. And I went on the hiking trail playing it on a headset, you know, or singing it in the car and over and over again until finally I got it in there. But that kind of discipline tends to make everything else work better.
Right. So music developed discipline, you would say, right?
Well, yeah, but you have to be committed to doing it. See, when I'm mentoring people, I do mentorships in 1 month, 3 month, and 10 month processes. And I call the 3 and 10 month one Going Pro and the Experts Academy. And the first thing I do is I have people choose their level of aspiration. How far up the mountain do they really want to go in this lane? So let's take music for me. I could choose to be competent, able to play music pretty well, excellent, able to impress others, a master, where I, anytime I want to, could impress others, a leading authority, or a celebrity. Well, I choose to be competent. I'm not trying to be able to stand side by side with Eric Clapton and have people say, who's that other guy? Wow. I want to be able to, like I got on stage in Nashville a few years back with John Oates of Hall & Oates and a few other guys. And I played and sang, and so did the other guys. And I didn't stand out. I don't care. I got to play with John Oates. Did you? No. Okay. Goal achieved, right?
Yeah. For me, music as the creative art develops some kind of a passion, right? Because you can create only with the passion, right? Without the passion, you cannot create, right? So
well, you can create with rational, logical thinking, but it's just not the same kind of creativity.
Exactly.
I could create a song that would be technically, okay, that's a nice piece of work, but you're not going to be humming it in your head when you go home and wanting to share it with friends. But a friend of mine told me one day, he said, we're going to have a barbecue, bring your guitar. And I said, are you going to really have a barbecue, or are you just going to cook outdoors? He said, what's the difference? I said, I'll get back to you. So I wrote a song about barbecue. And I've played it all over, and I've had other friends share it all around the world. And, it's a style of cooking. It's a tasty treat. It's a Southern man's religion, entirely based on meat. It's a taste of home, a taste of love, and the thrill of Mountain Dew. It's a touch of heaven with a dash of hell, and we call it barbecue. It goes on.
Yeah, so actually, sorry, I liked your singing, so I was like just thinking about that right now without my point. So every time I watched your speaking or read a book, or just you put so much passion to everything you do around you. Even this interview, you're like with passion with songs, and I kind of understand where you're coming from. With having that energy, that passion, right?
Yeah.
But I see so many authors and creators also create great books, but they're very logical, but there's no kind of passion, like, in a core in that books, right?
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is passion something that can be developed, or either you are born with it or without it? What do you think?
No one is without passion. No one. Many people develop the pattern of suppressing their passions until finally they don't even notice they're there anymore. But every human life has passion, a desire to live more fully. When you think about nature, a single-cell creature, an amoeba, its job, its implied purpose in life is to live as fully as it can live. Well, the same thing's true for all forms of life, including a virus. COVID-19, a virus, its life purpose was to duplicate itself and grow, right? To be a virus, right? Go viral. The same thing's true on a healthy side. Looking at what's the purpose of any life? To live fully.
Right.
To grow and explore and expand and do and use all the possibilities within it, and to duplicate itself and perpetuate life. Well, that's on a natural or a scientific level. On a philosophical level, I believe in a creator. I don't believe there's a guy sitting up in the clouds named God. I believe God is impossible for a human to comprehend, but that there is a creative source that actually cares, that is composed of love. Two ways of looking at the world. One, there is no God. One, there is a God. And then you have to ask the question, if there is one, what's the nature of it? Is it angry or loving? Well, if it's angry, then life's all about obedience, subservience, punishment, things like that, guilt. If it's about love, then it's all about service. It's all about caring. It's all about creativity and that sort of thing. So my belief is there is absolutely a creative source, and it's a loving source, not a judgmental, hating source. Because if it created life and life is constantly seeking to expand, then clearly It's not about killing. It's about living. I wrote in my book, The Acorn Principle, the purpose of life is really living. Living mentally, physically, family, social, spiritual, career, financial, emotional. Being you in all the ways that you can be you as fully as possible. People say, well, what about money? Well, money should never be a goal. It should be a tool. Because money has no value except in use. You stack up money, it's not even a nice decoration. So it's only valuable in use. Well, what does that mean? It means money is a permission slip for other things. I want a boat. Okay, you'll need money. Yeah, but what I want is a boat. I don't want money. You're going to have to get the money first because that's how you get the boat. Okay, so money is a tool, right? And the more of it you acquire, the more fully you can live. Well, I don't care about money. I just want to help people. How many? Well, what do you mean? Many as possible. How many are you going to help with $19? How many are you going to help with $5 billion?
Yeah.
So, but life's not about money. I just said that.
Yeah. The reason I asked the question is I can see so many products, I can see so many podcasts, I can see so many conversations happening without passion. As if, people, there are more people, but there are less passion in the world with what they're doing. So, right? And, maybe you can, I know people listening to this, maybe you can advise and something to all of us. What can we do about passion to have more passion around us? I think that I'll be on the mission to create more passion around me, just because I'm so sad sometimes when I see the work of someone without like passion, and you don't see the fire in their eyes, and you're like, let's do something about it. So what can we do about it?
First thing is to value it, to notice inside you that there is passion. There is, passion is the impulse, the strong, joyful impulse to do something, not a fearful or an angry impulse. Passionately hate X, Y, and Z. Well, I don't hate anything. There are things I dislike, but hatred means I want harm to come to it. No, I don't do that. I mean, I might use that word by mistake once in a while, but most of the time I don't use that word at all. Because even people that I think are doing harm to our country and politicians I dramatically disagree with, I don't hate them. I just want them not to have the power to do more harm. Just stop breaking things, right? And that's for whoever we're talking to, not politics or whatever. So everybody has passion, and passion is based in love, in caring, in joy. So if you look at what gives you joy, look beyond the surface, because there's pleasure and then there's joy. What's pleasure? Pleasure, most people, when you think about pleasure, it's the trivial, and joy is the meat, so it's like sugar and protein. Joy is protein. Pleasure is sugar. So I want to go to a horror movie. Why? Because it gets me excited and terrifies me. Okay, but just recognize that that's trans fat and harmful sugar, right? And you're overdosing on it. So don't do that much, because if you keep doing that, you're going to the dark side. And your attitude, your mindset, your whole orientation is going to be shifted. Like people that watch soap operas, the daytime TV dramas, they watch them habitually every day. In a very short period of time, they become suspicious of everybody. They think, oh, that's just like that thing on Days of Our Lives. He's probably got a drug empire, and he's cheating on so-and-so, and he's trying to take such and such away and kill his poor old mother, right? So those shows are based in looking at the darker, more disgusting side of life. And they do it in a very compelling way, but it changes your worldview, just like I changed my worldview with Earl Nightingale. In 1971, I would come home during the day and watch soap operas with my wife
Mm-hmm.
because she was at home taking care of our new son and she had nothing else to do. She'd turn on the TV. Well, other people she knew were watching the soap operas, so they would talk about it.
Right.
Did you hear what Herman did? Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. You know what I think? I think he's better to, so that's what went on with it. Well, I got roped into it without realizing it. And I got to where I was planning my day around coming home at the time that I needed to be there to see whatever that soap opera was. And then I recognized it one day and I came home and I said to Paula, what I'm about to say is extremely selfish and unreasonable, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both, are going to stop watching soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
She said, well, I like them and your mom watches them and she and I talk about them.
Right.
And I said, if I have to break our television with a hammer, I will do so. We're going to stop watching soap operas. And she said, you have no right to do that. I said, correct. And I'm going to do it. I said, because it is having an evil effect on us and is diminishing the amount of love in our lives to make room for suspicion and cynicism and all this other. And if you want to read the Bible together or something like that, watch children's cartoons, okay, but not going to the dark side anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And she acquiesced reluctantly at first, but then finally said, I get it. And so she never went back to doing that.
And now 53 years together,
53
right?
years.
And you
That's
can
right.
see the fruits of that decision, right? Hey, let's not watch it.
That's right.
That's so
Oh, by the
inspiring.
way, we also made a commitment early in our marriage that if either one of us ever mentioned divorce
Yeah.
as a threat, you keep doing that, I'm going to divorce you.
Yeah.
That gave the other one permission to file for divorce that day.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, if it comes up in conversation, it's final. See ya. And now the people say, well, that's absurd. I mean, why go to such extremes? Because I had seen other couples who would yell at each other and threaten divorce. And I realized there was no trust between them, that everything was tentative based on how they felt that day and whether they were in a good mood or not. And I wasn't willing to live like that. And I told Paula, I'm genuinely, deeply to the core of my soul in love with you. And I want a joyful life with you. And I'm not willing to become one of those.
Well, talking about passions, I know
Yeah,
about
you think
the
what I
other
said
passion.
wasn't passionate?
Yeah, it was very
you don't,
passionate.
But that's what I was just noticing is that I was very passionate about what I was just saying.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would react by saying, that's just too extreme. Think about it and then come back to me on that, right?
I mean, listen, you cannot question that morale because you're the live example of when you make the right choice and then 50 years after you have the fruits of that choice that you're happy with, they're satisfied with, that are fulfilling, right?
Yeah.
That's so inspiring. Jim, another passion that you have that I know are the motorcycles. And I've read that you've done more than 150,000 miles across Europe and the United States on a motorcycle. So the question for you is, what do you think about when you ride a motorcycle?
Well, one of the things I don't do is I don't take along a sound system. I don't listen to radio or tapes. I don't, listen to books on tape. It's me and the world. That's it. So there's nothing, no earbuds going in, feeding me something else. I'm on the road and I do what I call riding free. I even wrote a song about that. And riding free, got the highway at my feet, no place to be, no schedules to meet. There's not a thing in this world to tie me down, and I just go on. I'm riding free. When I go out for a ride, most of the time I have no destination. So I get on the motorcycle and I am free. Am I going to turn right or left? I don't know. I'll know when I get there. Do I get to the intersection? I think there's a bright, shiny object. Let's go that way, right? And I'll go down some winding road. And then I explore.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I love exploring because there's no goal in exploring except the exploration. So if I go to, say, Hayes County, Texas, and it's got all kinds of wonderful little roads, I come across a road and I wonder where that one goes, and I just head down there. And so I get my time in the saddle, riding the bike and enjoying the day and looking at the world and smelling and feeling the temperature and everything else. And it's just joyful. So I can go for hours or days on end and just be happy as a clam. One time I was in San Diego, California, living there. And I learned that there was a motorcycle rally in Cody, Wyoming, thousands of miles away. And I said to Paula, I think I'm going to go to this motorcycle rally. Do you want to go? And she said, that's a lot of time on the back seat. I don't think so. And I said, well, do you want to fly up there and meet me and ride around for a little bit and then you can fly back? And she said, nah, you go ahead. So I hopped on the bike after dinner one night with her and Jimmy. He was still at home. About 7 p.m., I got on my motorcycle and I rode in August from San Diego to Yuma, Arizona in the desert. Got a cheap motel room, slept until about 4 a.m., got up at 4 a.m. and jumped on the bike and rode across the desert before it got too hot, all the way to Prescott, Arizona, long way across the big open desert. Had breakfast in Prescott, long delayed breakfast. And then rode on, went on to Flagstaff, Arizona and up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and all the way to Cody, Wyoming. And I got a call. That was in the day of payphones and not cell phones. I take a cell phone with me, but I don't plug into it. But, it's there when I decide to look.
Right.
But I got to Cody, Wyoming, and I called my office back in San Diego. And they said, hey, you have a last-minute speech booking in, coincidentally, Austin, Texas, where I live now. And I said, well, okay, send me a suit, a shirt, shoes, a tie, and the files, and send me a tray full of slides, all in a box, to the hotel in Austin. And they said, okay. So I went to the airport in Cody, Wyoming, and I said, can I leave my motorcycle in your baggage claim area covered up for a couple of days? And they said, sure. They wouldn't do it today, but that was before.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, so I hop on a plane and I fly from Cody, Wyoming to Austin, Texas, take off my leathers, put on my suit, get up the next morning and give a speech in the suit, go back to the hotel, change clothes back into my leathers, fly back to Cody, Wyoming, and ship all the business stuff home. Hop on the bike and ride to Boise, Idaho, and then Salt Lake City, and then back to San Diego. It was one of the greatest times of my life. Did not take any recordings or anything like that with me. Just me and my thinking.
Wow.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah. You were telling this and I was like, you didn't use the Google Maps. Like, what?
No, I used paper fold-up maps.
Yeah, I imagine. Like, I'm using Google Maps if I'm going from home to the commute where I know that it's a 10 minutes drive and I know the way I'm still doing the maps. It's just kind of a part of the habit, right?
Well, I had a pack that was on top of my tank, a tank bag on top of my gas tank, and the top of it was clear plastic. And I put a physical paper map under that so I could ride along and look down, occasionally stop and, oh, that's interesting. I'll go that way, So,
wow. You just casually mentioned, I just crossed the desert, whatever. Have you been ever in danger? Like riding, was there a situations that you were like, oh, Jim, that's it? Yeah. I've been in danger of dangerous people, including a small town policeman who clearly was not going to do me well. He was going to do me harm. He saw me coming through town on a motorcycle at legal speed limits. And decided to follow me all the way to the edge of town. And then he left me alone.
But I mean, he was right behind me and I'm driving along being very careful and very safe. And I'm thinking, I know back in Arkansas, a guy that was a small town cop. And the reason he took the job was he enjoyed beating people. He was a evil guy. And so I realized I could have that kind of problem. And that scared the daylights out of me. And I've been in places where I stopped to get gas and go in to get a sandwich, and it turns out it's a outlaw biker gang bar, that kind of a place.
Yeah.
But I did okay. And I've been in situations where I took a spill on my bike on a back road way the heck back, far from any houses or anything else, out in farmland. And I had to figure out a way to get myself up and get my bike upright and nurse it down this steep hill, and then take the saddlebags off of it so it could go through a fence opening, and then put the saddlebags back on and start it up again and ride with a cracked wrist to a safe place. I mean, yeah, I've had occasions.
Wow. Yeah. You do still, you mentioned you do still explore and you still drive, right? You still are on the motorcycle, 76. So, is it more dangerous to explore these days than you had back in 70s, 80s, or that's the same, nothing changed?
No, I would say it's safer because you got cell phones everywhere. And also, I'm not going into the remote hinterlands where there's nobody for miles, although I do cover some of that kind of territory on occasion. The thing that makes it safe or unsafe primarily is the driver, the rider in my case, right? And if you're sensible about, you don't drink if you're going to ride a motorcycle.
Right.
And, I can handle a couple of beers. No, you can't. You just think you can. Others could tell that you were impaired a little bit. And how much does a little bit matter? Not much if nothing goes wrong. But when's the last time nothing went wrong? When's the last time somebody didn't run through an intersection a little bit too late? When's the last time that bump was a whole lot worse than you thought it was going to be? Or the curve is a little steeper than you thought, and you're going to have to figure out how to not slide out in the curve. Those kind of things. Or the weather. All of a sudden, hey, they didn't predict a rainstorm. That's not fair. Sorry, it's going to rain anyway. Or hail, or wind, or whatever. And I've been in all those situations. Or deep cold. Been on ice and snow up in the Rocky Mountains with my wife on the back seat, driving along like this on the ice in the mountains. And then going down a steep other side of the mountain on the same ice on two wheels. Are you kidding me? With a drop off that goes for a mile straight down. Did that in the Alps. Took a spill in the Alps and pulled a muscle in my thigh, and had my wife on the back seat, big BMW motorcycle, and had to ride mountain passes in the Alps to get back to our hotel, injured. Because she couldn't drive the bike.
Right.
And so she's dependent on me. I'm dependent on the bike, and I'm in pain. So yeah, I've had dangerous situations like that. But the primary danger is the driver. And distracted driving is number one. And I don't mean looking at your cell phone if you're on a motorcycle. I mean looking at the houses as you go by instead of the texture of the road.
Right.
Or the traffic, two cars in front of you, that guy's driving like an idiot. Well, he's up there. Yeah, but it's going to have a domino effect if he does something really stupid. So back off or take an alternate route. And when jerks are on the road, and they're out there, some of them think motorcycles are evil and it's okay to kill you. And so they will drive in a way that might cause you to die. So just let them be stupid somewhere else. Just back off, right? And that's my philosophy. I've become a much safer car driver because I drive a motorcycle. And I took Motorcycle Safety Foundation training courses long after I'd been riding motorcycles for years, because I knew it would teach me things I was never taught in the first place, like how to increase the amount of the tire that's sticking to the pavement when you need to brake. They don't teach you that. You know, when you first learn, what I had been taught is how to steer a motorcycle, not how to stop a motorcycle in an emergency. And so then I took advanced handling skills courses on racetracks at 100 miles an hour and hairpin curves with the world superbike racing champion, Reg Pridmore.
Wow. Well, that's a lot, Jim. Yeah. So,
yeah, my biggest problem is over answering.
No. That's a lot to unpack, you know, it's because it's like an adventure. I mean, obviously, you know, I'm romanticizing a lot of things in my head with like imagining you on the bike, on the desert with all those things. I was just kind of having a lot of those visual, you know, images in front of me. But here's the question for you. For you as a man, having that adventurous, you know, hobby or having the passion for motorcycle and spending the time out there, you know, exploring, etc. Do you think that kind of lifestyle played a huge role into developing you, your personality, your passion, your discipline? And would you recommend this to other, you know, people listening to this, having something like that? Or we are just kind of romanticizing, or they can replace it with something else? Or, you know, like you were telling me this, I was like, oh, I should have something like this. I should have like a bike or something I wanted to go and explore. Because I have a feeling that if I don't have this in my life, then I would miss that when I'm older. And I was like sitting down and say, when I was younger, why I didn't do that?
What I think is the key. It's not about your choice of the toy. It's about your experience as you play. Right? So maybe my toy is a guitar. It's not about the guitar. It's not about mastering guitar. It's about the experience I have when I'm playing guitar. I can sit for hours, as long as my fingers and my voice hold out, and play and sing to nobody, or to the ducks at the lake, you know, or to one passing stranger. I don't care. I'll play and sing anywhere and have to the point of embarrassment sometimes. Motorcycle is not about the motorcycle. It's about the freedom and being in the flow for an extended period of time, because I think about all kinds of things that are going on in my life, come up with great solutions to business problems and other issues, great insights on subjects that I'm thinking about, reflecting on, because I'm not forcing something else into my head. When I get up in the mornings, I don't turn on TV or radio. I want silence. You know, I know lots of people, and God bless them, you know, that's the first thing they do. Okay, that's their style, not mine. I prefer quiet time first. I'll get to the other later. But I want my mind to explore what matters to it. And so motorcycling, bicycling, jogging, you know, when I was in Tulsa and I was going from fat to fit, I was running on Riverside Drive every day, and I got to where I could run 5 miles easily, nonstop. And that time was precious to me because it was like time on a motorcycle. You know, I didn't require much equipment, 2 running shoes, and that was it. But I had a similar experience. And the mountain trail running, I did that for 18 years in Thousand Oaks, California, and had a group of people I went with. But we would go at sunrise every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So it was always at sunrise. And we would always go 3 miles to the top of the furthest hill and then 3 miles back. And it's not 3 miles up and 3 miles down. It's 3 up and down and up and down and up and up and up to the final peak and then back. So it was vigorous both ways. But I would only talk with the others on the way back. On the way up, it was me and me. That's it.
Yeah.
Pushing the envelope, you know, going along with the hiking poles, either running or trudging, and just focusing on feeling, noticing what my body is doing, what my mind is doing, noticing the trail, and being totally present in that experience. And then on the way back, we'd tell stories and laugh and do all kinds of things.
There is a book called The 8 Mountains. It's an Italian book, and in Italian, it's called Le Otto Montagne. And it's about exploring the mountains. And it resonated with me because at that book, they also had the same habit of when you go one way, it's complete silence. You listen to the nature, you go on yourself, and you talk only when you go back. And all the kids, the small one, even children one, knew that. So they're like, we cannot talk right now. We'll just go back.
That's right.
I don't want it. That's so cool.
We had a member of our hiking group who was a chatterbox. There was a woman, and she never stopped talking. And so when she joined the group, we would start the hike at sunrise, and she's la, 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 and we just said, okay, now. And we'd take off running. And we'd run until we were worn out to get distance between us and her. Then on the way back, we'd talk with her all the way. But she never got it that going was about a different thing than returning.
I do have a last section of my question. I really wanted us to cover those while I have you on. The last time we had a brief chat, you mentioned living the third stage of your life.
Yeah.
And it kind of stuck with me. So I do have a few questions about this. So first, I wanted to understand, when did you first feel the transition to the third stage?
Probably around age 62, because a single event happened at age 62 that caused me to rethink. I was running mountain trails, and out of our group of 60 people, we would have 18 to 25 of them show up on a typical weekday or weekend for the hike. And I was faster than all of them. And there were some in their late 40s, some in their 70s already, but I was blazing fast on the trail at age 62. And it was the most fit I'd ever been in my life because I hadn't been an athlete in high school. Right. Though I had one season on the swimming team. That was the end of that. So here I am at 62, trim, fit, hard as a rock, and able to set personal records. I set 27 personal records on the trails in 1 year.
Oh, wow.
So I just kept getting better and better and better. And then one day I was on a mountain trail. I was about 1.5 miles in, and I came down a long sweeping hill running, like boom, boom, big bounding steps. And some of the other hikers are on the trail ahead of me, and I go right past them. And they said, slow down. I said, no. And I keep going, and I cross a little creek, and I'm going up the next hill, and I got dizzy. So I slowed down, and I stayed dizzy, so I stopped, but then I fainted.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
okay.
And the other hikers came up about that time. And of course, when you faint, the reason you faint is because the blood pressure dropped and it's rushed away from your head.
Right.
And when you fall, your blood pressure normalizes.
Yeah.
So you wake up. And I did, shortly after touching the ground. And they're all around me. And I said, hey, I've still got time to make a good time on this run. And I get up and start to go, and they go, come back here. One of them was a doctor. He said, don't do that. He said, meet us at coffee. So I went back home and cleaned up and went to coffee. And he said, tell me about your experience. And I did. And he said, you need to go get checked out. So I went to the hospital. And they checked me, and they said, you're in good shape. I said, that's not why I came. They said, oh, well, you've got a left bundle branch block. I said, heart blockage? Clogged arteries? They said, no, your arteries are clean as can be. It's an electrical problem in your heart. And it's very common. And I said, well, what do I do to fix it? And they said, you can't. I said, no, come on. I'm willing to do the work, endure the pain, take the time. You can't. Well, then how can it be improved? And they said, pacemaker. I said, no. Absolutely. Forget it. No.
There's no sport.
And I'm not willing to get old yet. And they said, oh, no, you can run marathons with a pacemaker. I said, really? And they said, yeah. So I pushed them away, and I went through all kinds of like $26,000 worth of tests and confirmed what they had said. But I was still able to get back on the hiking trails and run. So I did that, but I kept getting that dizziness feeling occasionally. And so I cut back a little bit, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. Finally, 10 months later, I caved in and said, okay, do the pacemaker. So I went in and got an operation. They put in a pacemaker. And I went home now this is an overnight procedure, but it's a big operation because they're operating on your heart. You could die.
Yeah.
So they put it in, and it's like an Oreo cookie about this big, and it's under the skin right there. And it has 2 little electrical leads that go into the vein inside the heart to stimulate it when it needs stimulation. And the electrical problem was upper part of my heart would beat and the lower part would say, huh? In other words, was that a beat? Should I also beat? Or is it my turn yet? In other words, I'm getting this odd rhythm.
Yeah.
And so the pacemaker solved that. And so my heart beats fine. And the day I got out of the hospital, which is day 2, day 1, I go into the hospital. The next morning, they perform the operation. Late that afternoon, I go home. I showered. I put on a tuxedo, and I went to a hotel and emceed a banquet for 500 people.
Oh, wow.
So I'm standing up there in a tuxedo with bandages here and bandages down in my groin where they'd gone into a vein, and, doing my speaker thing. And when it was over, I went home and I slept late the next day. And when I woke up, something felt wrong. And I called the doctor, and he said, well, come back and let's look at it. And I came back, and one of the leads in my heart had not hooked in, and it was flapping around on every heartbeat. And he said, no, that could kill you. You're going back in for another operation right now. So they fixed it, and the next day I went home, and I've never had a problem since. And that was 2009, long, long time ago. They've replaced it since. They call that changing the battery. They're changing the unit. But anyway, they did that in like 2016. But I have no problem with exertion, nothing. But I guarantee you that changed my mindset about my mortality. And a couple of years later, not a couple of years, several years later, 2017, I had a annual checkup, and they said, you have prostate cancer. Uh-oh. Prostate cancer. They said, yeah, it's the most common form of cancer, and it's the most curable. And I said, well, good. What do I do? And they said, well, it's a slow growing cancer. You could live with it for decades. I said, get it out.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you don't have to. I said, I've got a lot of living left to do. Get it out. I don't want any clouds hanging over my head.
That I have cancer.
Hey, remember, you got cancer. You got to be careful.
Yeah.
So they did a radical prostatectomy and got rid of it, thank heavens. And so my tests ever since then have been 0. And life goes on.
Wow.
So I've had
that
challenging experiences.
I
I've had cancer, had to have all that. But that was when I realized I'm in stage 3.
Yeah, the stage 3. Now, so I'm 30 years old, and I have the feeling that my first stage in life already done. I am in the second stage or something. And it's like, okay, my youth is done. I'm already
Let me ask you a quick question before you ask mine.
Okay.
All right. When was the day you took charge of your own life?
The day I went for my first job, the first time I was interviewed and I had a job offer, and I was like, okay, this is it, Michael. You are in the final stage of like, either you make it or you don't. So that was the time, because before that, I was like in university. I was like just kind of, playing the ball, just going to the gym, whatever. I wasn't taking my life seriously because I said like, I don't know, I'm going to explore, I didn't decide it. But when so there was the time when I said, oh, wow, I can do the effort and they're going to pay me for that. Or I can I can do extra and they can pay me extra. So how far I can go with this extra that I can get the value from it? I think I was like 23 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. That's how old I was when I got married, when I realized that my life was serious and I had to start getting serious. But I was 26 when I heard Earl Nightingale on the radio. And then by the time I was 28, I was selling his tapes and all that.
Yeah.
But for everyone in our field of human development, they can find a day just as quickly as you did. When was the day you took charge of your own life? Well, it was, I hadn't thought about it, but it's absolutely clear in there. For me, it was hearing Earl on the radio that day. That was the big one, right? So when you look at that, that's when you enter stage 2. Stage 1, you're being shaped and formed by other people. Stage 2, you're the shaper. Stage 3, you realize you're limited, and so you're making adjustments based on that. But still, you still have the same passion you had 30, 40, 50 years ago, and you're just looking for more effective ways to express it. The passion, as you say, is still there.
Now it makes sense. So I didn't look at this from this. So now I understand. So the question was, how did you feel the transition going to the second stage? And now you answer like the transition was the time you heard the Earl Nightingale. All right. So let's talk about the third stage just for a second. What do you appreciate at the third stage? Because I understand what you appreciated on the second stage, right?
Oh,
it was
yeah.
a lot to appreciate. But what's something that new happened, something that opened up for you, new that you kind of start and you can appreciate at the third stage that you didn't either appreciate or you didn't seem to notice that on the second stage of
Well, I noticed that after I was clearly in stage 3, and there could be 4 stages, who knows? But anyway, stage 3, in the later part of my life, little things didn't matter as much as they used to. Little things like if I found a spot on my face, I wasn't going to run to the dermatologist and get it removed. Yeah. I was going to let natural aging take place and not worry about it unless it became distracting or made me look bad. Little things like aging, not a problem. The fact that my hair went gray, I don't need to go dye it a different color. Gray is just fine. Less hair, more real estate. That's okay. I remember when I was 62 and I did skydiving and they filmed it coming down. I did a tandem or the guy on my back and another guy with a camera. And so I looked at it and I'm falling like this. And what I noticed is that all this skin up here instead of hair. And I thought, that's horrible. But after that, I look at that and think, what? Really, Jim? Come on. One of the things I really appreciate in this part of my life is I understand what wisdom is. Wisdom is knowing how to think about things, not just knowing things. Knowledge is knowing. Wisdom is understanding and being able to use the knowing in powerful ways. And in wisdom, you're always going deeper, deeper, deeper until you hit bedrock. And that's been the habit that I've tried to develop over the years. What's behind that and behind that and behind that? And what's that based on? What's the premise here? Is the premise he's guilty, we're going to find a way to convict him? Or is the premise innocent until proven guilty, and we're just going to see if there's enough evidence or not? Big difference.
Yeah.
And either one of them is going to tend to cause blind spots. Just make sure that blind spots that you accumulate are ones that don't come back to bite you. A year ago, little over a year ago, I got a call from my friend, Dr. Nito Kubain. He's the president of High Point University in North Carolina, which if you've never looked it up, look it up. The most amazing university on earth. High Point University, High Point, North Carolina. Nito called me. He's the president. And he said, Jim, am I correct in remembering that you don't have a college degree? I said, you're correct. I said, I've got 2 years, but no degree. He said, that's interesting because you're a college professor. I said, yes, I am. Executive MBA program, California Lutheran School of Management, California. He said, we would like to correct that. So you're going to receive an honorary business degree from High Point University. And they flew me and my family to High Point
So nice.
And I marched across the stage with the cap and gown with all the, the deans of the 10 schools of High Point University and a bagpiper and everything else. And I've got my tassel from the hat hanging right there and a diploma across the room.
Wow,
Okay.
that's so nice of them. And I saw that. I saw you received, and I was like, it was like 2020 or something, or
2021.
2021. I was like, oh, okay, so you got the degree in 2021. Interesting. I read
Yeah,
about that.
at
It's
age,
so nice.
75,
Yeah,
right?
it's so nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's what you appreciate the third stage for. Things
Yeah.
like this happening, right? To color the life.
And awards, lifetime achievement awards and things like that. Speaker Hall of Fame I got when I was, 1985. Well, long ago when I was in my 40s, I was inducted into the Speaker Hall of Fame, inducted into the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame in my 60s, received the Golden Gavel Award from Toastmasters International in 2001, which is their award that they had given to Earl Nightingale and Tony Robbins and, famous people like that, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, Jeannie Robertson. Yeah. And then I got a call in August or May of last year, 2022. Daniel Rex, the CEO of Toastmasters International, which now has 360,000 members, kind of like the JCs used to, and they're worldwide. I was asked to be their opening keynote speaker in 1995 in San Diego. So after their opening ceremonies, the flag, 149 countries and the flags and everything, I gave a 1-hour speech, standing ovation, sold tens of thousands of dollars worth of books and signed autographs for 3 hours. Wow. That was 1995. 2001, they called me and they said, you're the Golden Gavel recipient for the Millennium Year 2001. That was huge. That was also in California, in Anaheim, in front of about 1,500 people, and one of the great honors of my entire career. So 2022, May, I get a call, Jim, would you be willing to be the opening keynote speaker again at our Nashville convention? And I said yes. And I spoke to 1,000 in person, another 1,000 online in Nashville in 2022. Now, pause for a second. When was my first opening keynote speech, main stage, Toastmasters, and me not being a Toastmaster? When was it? 1995. Then in 2001, they gave me the award that all my speaker heroes had received. Wow. In 2022, they asked me to be the opening keynote speaker again. That's 27 years. And to my knowledge, there's never been another person in the history of Toastmasters who has been asked back to the main stage 3 times, let alone 3 times over 27 years. You were 3 years old when I gave my first opening keynote speech to Toastmasters. And I'm not a Toastmasters member and wasn't. Isn't that amazing?
That's
So
amazing.
that's kind of the third stage.
Yeah.
Big deal. That kind of thing happens.
Wow. Hey, you mentioned that there are some things that now you don't consider to be as important as they were. I want to know, hopefully this is like the dream to get to where you are professionally and with regards to your life and your health, and because this is what, a person can dream for. Like, it's just, it's wow. So help me to understand, what's something that you consider to be important in life now it's actually not?
First off, I used to think it was really important to write a book and have it published. Now I've written 25 books. So my goal's not the same. My goal in the past was to have a book, to be an author, to be recognized on a list like the New York Times bestseller list, that kind of thing, to speak on main stages like the Toastmasters Golden Gavel or the opening ceremonies. to speak at the $1 Million Roundtable, to be a headliner at the National Speakers Association, to become president of the National Speakers Association, to speak, to perform on stage on Broadway in Nashville.
Right.
All these things I've done. And now that I've done them, they're very satisfying, but they're no longer that important. You say, well, it's not important because you've done it. Well, yeah, that's kind of true. But then again, before I had done it, it was really important. It wasn't sort of important. It was really important because I didn't yet fully believe in me and have a soul that was at peace as to who I was yet. It was happening. I just wasn't there yet. And now, I love life. I totally love life. I enjoy creating. I like brainstorming. I like mentoring people. That's my biggest. I really get a kick out of somebody says, Jim, look, I'm doing pretty well. I'm in stage 2 full on. But I need a mentor. I want an expert guide that's going to say, calm down there, Sparky. That's not where you should focus. You should be over here. Yeah. And help me understand things better. And so that's when I started offering people, the 1 month, 3 month, or 10 month mentorships. And basically what they do is just put me on retainer like they hired me as a part-time employee for a while. I'm now co-authoring books with other people and taking some of my old books and having other people rewrite them with me and revise them. And then we've got both our names on it, and they can own it as well as me. So they can do what they want. I can do what I want. And we're not dependent on each other, Right. What else? I don't know. Health matters a lot because every day I'm conscious of the fact that my vehicle, my body is not as capable as it was.
You obviously mentioned that, money has never been important and this is just the tool, right? So no one was chasing them. I mean, you mentioned that there are some people, connections that you've been, that you make in life that are not as important, right? That you can just lose those connections and that's it.
And there are other connections that endure indefinitely. The number of people who I just get spontaneous phone calls or texts from that I haven't seen in years that are vitally important to who I am as a person, it's just so satisfying. I got one this morning. And I reached out the other day. I was going through some old photos and I saw something that reminded me of a mentor of mine in Tulsa, Oklahoma from years ago. Now, in 1975, 76, 77, I worked at the USJC's national headquarters. I was hired away from there by my first speaking and consulting client, the Tulsa Agency of Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company, in 1977. That allowed me to be an independent speaker out on my own with a steady enough income to not worry about paying the bills. The guy's name who ran that was Joe Willard, 1977. So I worked with Joe as a client for 6 years, grew my speaking business, and then finally moved to California and lived out there for 37 years before coming here to Texas. In 2017, now I want you to notice 1977, 87, 97, 2007, 2017, many years later, I called Joe and I said, Joe, I am now doing regular lecture tours 4 to 6 times a year in mainland China. They're treating me like a god. They give me a suite with 5 rooms when it's only me. They drive me around in a Rolls Royce. I mean, it's amazing. They won't let me buy anything, including gifts for my family. They pay for them. They give me watches. I've never experienced anything like this in my life. I'm speaking through an interpreter for 6 hours a day to thousands and thousands of Chinese people. I want you to come as my guest on the next tour. All expenses paid. he said, he calls me JC, Jim Cathcart. He said, JC, I'm all over it. Let's do it. I said, okay. And so I sent him a ticket, or he booked it and I paid for it anyway. Flew him first class to Taiwan, where we met. I gave speeches there for 2 or 3 days, and I brought him up on stage and interviewed him as a successful man who had some life lessons to teach.
Right.
And then, he'd sit in the audience, and the people would come up and ask for his autograph too. So this was cool. And my agent was giving him his own suite.
Right.
Not as big as mine, but still a nice suite. And then we went to mainland China, and we toured mainland China. And he went back home and he said, I don't think I've ever had as much fun as an adult as I did on that trip with you. I've never laughed so hard in my life or had so much fun. And he flew to California and he said, I want you to meet me for lunch. I can only be here for the day. I said, okay. And I go to lunch and he hands me an envelope. And I look in the envelope and it's filled with $100 bills. I said, what is this? He said, this is just a part of what you spent on me. He said, I appreciate it so much. And I just felt like I ought to be carrying part of my own load. And I accept the gift, and it was a gift I'll never forget. But I want you to have this, use it however you wish. Wow. 40 years later?
Yeah.
40 years?
40 years.
Yeah. And he and I are dear friends to this moment.
I actually have a block of questions about China, but if we do this,
we'll do a
2
separate show for that.
A separate show. We need to do part 2. So I'm going to ask audience if people like our conversation and they, put likes, put comments, and they want us to engage again with the part 2. I do have a lot of questions about China.
Good.
About your album Fireside Songs, and some about
that was so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to also talk about the whole kind of recession, because you've lived through a lot of crises, a lot of recessions. I saw a few interviews of you of 2008 about the relationship intelligence, and I wanted to touch base on that, but I think we need half an hour just to cover that block. So we'll do that separate time.
And I found a co-author for relationship intelligence.
Oh, yeah?
A very successful speaker who's written a book on AI and is a brilliant guy. And we're probably going to co-author a book on relationship intelligence.
You see, like I see some signals that are happening in there in my research, and now you kind of say that you're going to be a book there. Wow. So I think that the close-up message for today would be this. So I mentioned that I am very inspired by your story, by your life, and one day I wanted to get there. So, and then you mentioned that you like mentoring, right? So what do I need to always keep in mind, Jim? What would you say, Michael? Keep in mind this, and things gonna work out for you.
If you remember that purpose exercise from 1974, what's my life purpose? Do that for yourself. Just journal. Just write. Dump all your thoughts about what you want to do with your life. How do you want your life to matter, to make a difference? And just write. Don't worry about being selfish. Don't worry about anyone else looking at it. Write a message to your soul, or from your soul, about why you think your life is here and what you want to do with it. Second, choose your level of aspiration. How high up that mountain do you want to go? And then third, do an exercise that I talk about in my book, Mentor Minutes. How do you reach the top 1% of any field? As a matter of fact, get a copy of that book, because it'll guide you through this. And do the future you exercise. And it's you describing to yourself what the future you will look like as it unfolds in the ways that you dream of having it unfold. And then get with me and let's book a mentorship.
Jim, it's been a privilege having you on. I would love to do part 2 soon. So once we release this one. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. And again, I appreciate you and appreciate the work that you've done. It's been It's been a great conversation. Thanks for
Well,
a
it's
lot
been
of
it's been
thought-provoking
joyful for me, Michael. Thank you, because you've made this very comfortable, very personal, very trusting atmosphere, so that I felt I could tell the whole truth and not have to edit myself. And I appreciate that. And I really do look forward to another of these where we can explore music in China and motorcycles or whatever the heck you want to
I would
talk
love
about.
to do that.